What does this milk jug, this baseball cap, this colorful flannel, and these Moncala beads have in common with this Doberman? They were used to make a costume copied after this dog. If you love your Doberman and you'd like a costume for your next party so you could lay on the floor and imitate him, I'll show you how to do it, and you could even have a cute little crop tail just like this guy does. Well, this costume was really fun for me to make. My son has a Doberman and he asked me to make him a Doberman costume. So I'll show you a few of the trickier parts for making this costume. To wear it, you need to wear a long sleeve black shirt. I made a kind of like a tunic that was sleeveless, and it's made out of fleece, so it's plenty warm. And so Peter just wore a long sleeve black shirt underneath it. It has a zipper front. You could probably buy a pattern for a men's sleeper if there would be such a thing, and everything about this is pretty much just a normal sleeveless whatever pajama until we get to the feet. And the feet have an opening for his shoes and then a special kind of a toe of a Doberman right here, and I'll show you some of the other parts that are uniquely Doberman and how to make them, the hardest things. Okay, to make a Doberman look like a Doberman, you need something to make a firm shape for the ears, and so I used the bottom corners of the milk jugs, and I drew the shape and outline of each ear on opposite corners and cut them both out. And then up in the top corner where there's kind of a sharp edge, I cut 2 orbs for the eyes, and I'll cut those out really carefully because sometimes the milk jug will actually tear. And so I'll have the ears ready to go and the eyes. I cut the inside opening for each of the orbs and cover that edge, the outer edge, with glue, and I'll cover that with my black fleece and turn it over, and then I'll be making little snips into the middle so that I can wrap it around that sharp edge of the eye orb. The important thing is to make those little snips up to the plastic all the way around, and then I'll put glue in the inside there and wrap those little snips up around the edge and secure them with my little wonder clips, which are really handy tools. Now, it doesn't take very long for this tacky glue to really hold up. I'll get both the orbs done, and in just a few minutes I'll be taking the clips off. Okay, now I've got 2 eye orbs. I'm going to use these little Moncala beads as the eyeballs, but first I need to take extra pieces of fleece and I'll glue each of those on. And after I get them on, you can see through the eye openings that they look like real Doberman eyes. The next step is to glue the orb to that background fabric that's around the eye. Now I'll trim them up so that they'll be just about the size of the plastic milk jug that's behind this. I took a piece of the burnt orange fleece and glued it to the inside of the ears, and now I will take a piece of black fleece, and it needs to be about 1.5 inches longer than the bottom of the ear. That's going to hang off to help it connect to the head, and then enough fabric to wrap around the edge of the ears all the way around so that it'll look like a Doberman ear. I put the glue all over the back of the milk jug corner, and I started up at the top of the ear and kind of rotated it down so that I could make sure that it's centered on the fleece, and then I'm wrapping all of the corners from the back around using my little wonder clips, and I'll come back later and glue the front in after this back dries. And I'll do it kind of quickly here. Just put all those clips around. They really hold really nice. They're quite a nice little tool. After I get done with this, and I'll turn it over and show you, it looks really smooth and looks a lot like a real dog's ear. I think it's pretty impressive. See? Looks really cool. Okay, after the outside of the dog's ear dries, then I take off all the clips and trim the black fleece so that it's all even, and glue the front and wrap it around and clip it in place, and then let that dry for a while, and then take off all the clips, and I'm ready to move on. A Doberman's foot is rust colored with black toenails, and I decided to put the little toenails, got about halfway up through a pair of mittens that I made. I cut a pattern a little bit bigger than my hand, and before I sewed it together I cut 4 little holes about 4 inches from the end, and I inserted the claws in through those little holes. The way I made the claws, I took little pieces of fleece, about 2 inches by 2 inches, and folded them in half. And then I rolled them really carefully, making kind of a tiny point till they were kind of like shaped like a claw. And then I stitched it together about halfway up. Like this. And then I inserted it into the back side of the fabric where the 4 holes were until it kind of got kind of snug feeling. And then I flipped it over and I trimmed back, snipped all of the extra seam allowance. And this is very soft fabric, not unpleasant at all. I snipped back all the seam allowance and then folded it open and glued it in place and let the glue dry for a while. And that was kind of bulky in the middle, so I cut a little bit of the extra bulk out of the way and then just let those dry. I did both of those, and then I sewed the 2 mittens together. For the back feet, I took a piece of leather about the size of someone's shoe for the front part of someone's foot, and then his foot would go in there and the heel would be out on the ground, and inside of it I did it much like the other front paw with the little claws, except for this time I added some foam, as you can see, to kind of make the hind foot kind of stand up and make the toenails kind of stand out. This is what the inside of the Doberman head looks like. I started with a baseball cap like this, just an ordinary baseball cap. Now to make the snout, I had to roll the brim in like this, and doing that made the head too narrow and it kind of pinched. So I went ahead and cut about 1 inch off of the bell and made it so that it was more comfortable. It didn't change at all how the costume stayed to my head, but this shows kind of how I cut the bell off, and then I went ahead and cut through the headband to make it more comfortable. I took a piece of foam, you can use any kind you want, and I inserted it into the bill of the hat, and I made it about the width. Now a dog's snout is not quite so square, so I cut off the corners like this. And what kept it in that shape is I actually covered it with fabric. I didn't duct tape it or anything like that. I just made a little tubular shape for the Doberman's head. The 2 canine teeth on the top jaw were made the same way as the claws, except for I used white felt. I rolled it up really tight. It seemed too bulky for the tooth, so I did it again and snipped a little of the extra fabric off and rolled it up. And then I hand stitched it, and I inserted it into the black upper fabric of the jaw, just the same way that I did the claws. Stitched it first and then inserted it. The bottom teeth were made the same way. I had 2 canines cut that same way that I did with the rolled up felt, and then the other smaller teeth I just snipped some felt that was folded in half and inserted it into the black fabric of the bottom of the jaw. I made the bottom jaw by sewing a rounded pouch with rust-colored fabric on the one side and black on the other, and inserting a piece of cereal box that was cut at that curved shape. And then I inserted teeth just like I made the other canines from the top. I made 2 canines for the bottom, and then after I got the teeth in place, I covered it with pink fabric for the gums. To make the Doberman's tail, I took a little piece of fleece and sewed a stitch up the side and turned it the right side out and put an ending to it. And I did it just like I did the toenails and the teeth, kind of cut a little hole and pulled the extra fabric through and stitched it down and filled it with foam. And so it's a nice firm tail and kind of wiggly. I looked at pictures of Dobermans to see where the different rust-colored spots are on their body, and just decided to put it here or there. And after I got the eyes done and the ears, and I put them onto the baseball cap, and then I built the snout and the teeth around that and put all the pieces together layer by layer. I glued pieces and sometimes I hand sewed them until I had pretty much my whole Doberman. Well, I had fun. Good luck on your Halloween costumes. Just by changing the color of the fabric, the shape of the snout, the color of the eyes and the ears, you could make any animal you wanted. A couple years ago, I made an Aztec jaguar costume for my son, and I left the brim of the hat rather straight out, but he had a lot of fun with it. You can do whatever you want as long as you have the fabric and your imagination.